and welcome to My Tennis Coaching. I'm your host, Steve Whelan, and today's webinar is all about climate setting. And the big question on the screen there, are you setting the right environment for your players? And we're going to kick off with something quite controversial. Are you, the coach, actually hurting your players' developments? Now, as a coach, as a head coach, as a coach educator, I've seen, I don't know, thousands and thousands of lessons. And the majority of bad lessons are not the player's fault. It's generally the coach's fault, because the role of the coach is super important. And I've put on the next screen here, what is the role of the coach? Well, the coach is the glue that holds everything together. It was a great phrase that was brought to me a few weeks back on a coach education course. And it's true, because as a coach, we control or we manipulate three very important things. One, we have control over the player. So the player will come to us for lessons, and our job is to try and make that player better. Now, that player has certain constraints, whether it be they physical or mental, based on their age and standard of their play. So we have a little bit of control over the player. We have a lot of control over the game or the tasks that the player do, or the drills or the activities. So we can help manipulate and set them up. And I've just literally released a book with 50 games, which I'll leave a link down below if you're interested in some new games and new activities, especially around the constraint-led coaching, the play approach, the learn by doing and sort of less by sort of telling approach. Please feel free to have a look at that down below. But today we're going to look at the environment. And as a coach, we can manipulate and control all three of these things. And a lot of the time, we're very good at setting up activities, but we tend to do it in the wrong type of environment. And the environment has a huge impact on player learning. And that's what we're going to have a look at, really deep dive in today. So as a coach, we can either help or hinder the learning with our climate setting. And you can call it environment, climate, culture. These are all very important words, and sometimes it's the one that gets lost. I think sometimes as coaches, we get so sort of bogged down in the drills and the activities and the player, and we actually forget about the environment. And tennis, you'll hear it on the TV, is very mental. And they'll say it all the time. It's like a game of chess. It's played in the head, and the head's very, very important. And a lot of the time we say the wrong thing or we set up the wrong activity, and that has a massive effect psychologically on the player. And it creates a lot of pressure and doubt. And that's what we're going to really look at today is, are we helping or hindering based on our climate setting? So a little bit of introduction to who I am and my journey. I've been a tennis coach now for 23 years, I believe, maybe 24. It's been a long time, I forgot, but I've coached thousands and thousands of players. I can't remember how many lessons I've done. I've been a full-time coach for 23 years, 50 weeks a year generally. So if you do the maths, it's quite a lot of lessons. And I've done some great lessons. I've done some bad lessons. And I'm always trying to learn from my mistakes. And my way of coaching has changed a lot over the last couple of years. A few years ago, I'd probably what you class as a very traditional coach, very dictatorial. I would tell the players what I wanted them to achieve, and very direct with my questioning, and very direct with my sort of, this is how I want you to play, this is what I want you to do. If I wasn't getting it from the player, I would sort of try and maybe raise my voice to motivate them, or if they were doing something wrong, I'd try and find a way of sort of trying to motivate them through sort of, I don't know, comparing them to other players and stuff like that. And over the last couple of years, I think the world's changed with obviously that's gone on over the last couple of years in terms of COVID and stuff. I think how people behave and how people take feedback has changed an awful lot. I think a lot of homeschooling's done a lot of damage emotionally in terms of feedback. And I think how we communicate with players has changed massively. I think how players learn, I think there's a lot more science around now learning styles. And again, if you listen to any of my previous webinars about sort of learning styles, a lot of kids are kinesthetic learners. They learn by feel. So my old way of traditional coaching, of telling, didn't really make much sense to me. And I've really changed my approach, and I see my role now as less of a teacher and more of a facilitator. So part of my role is to get the best out the player. And I've got to make sure that, one, I set the right environment, which we'll look at today, and we'll look through quite a few mistakes that I've made over the years and sort of my lessons from them. I really think about the tasks or the environment and how I set games up, and I try and let a lot of my activities do the work for me, and sort of less about me telling the player and more about them learning and themselves. So it's been a really interesting journey over the last couple of years, but the impact on my play has been huge. Like I'm getting more success from my players. I'm getting less tears, which I know is a strange one, because like a lot of players will get quite emotional with tennis because it's a lot to take in, which we'll look at in a few moments. So players get very emotional. Tennis is full of mistakes and losing, and that's hard for a young player to take. So you get a lot of emotion, a lot of tears. I'm getting less tears these days, and so when I say less tears, I'm not making them cry on purpose, but the demands of the game are so much, and so it is quite emotional. But I'm seeing less of that now because of my approach. What I'm trying to set up is more of a safe environment where players feel comfortable in making mistakes, because it's part of the game. Like if you look at Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, Venus, Serena, like they make quite a lot of mistakes. Like over 100 points, they win average 53%, so they're losing 47% of their points. And we don't see that sometimes. We just see these tennis players, these perfect beings who never make mistakes. But when you actually look at the stats, they miss a lot. And if you watch the Netflix documentary recently, all they talk about on there is learning to deal with defeat. And they have to lose one match, then they've got to travel around the world, and they know that they're probably not going to win the tournament, so they have to deal with that. And there's a great comment that I heard in a podcast yesterday, and it was about football or soccer if you're in America. And one of the managers was saying football is all about dealing with the lows, dealing with the disappointment of defeat, the disappointment of missing shots, and then sort of bouncing back and having that resilience. And tennis, I think, is even more than that, because you might make 2 or 3 mistakes in a football match and it might not cost you the match, but if you make a mistake in tennis, it costs you a point, and you've got your opponent celebrating down the other side as well. So that's quite difficult to take. So my whole approach, I think, over the last couple of years has completely changed in terms of how I coach my players. And I've been lucky enough to work with some good sort of county, regional, national level juniors. But my approach now has completely switched. And it was interesting because one of the parents said to me a few weeks back, "Oh, you're more like a sports psychologist these days." And I thought about it. I thought, yeah, you know what? It's probably right, because tennis is such a difficult game, and part of my job is to share that demand on the player, and make them understand the reality of the game, and sort of help them through the battles. Like dealing with the score, you could win the most points and then still lose the match. You can be 7-0 up and lose a tiebreak 10-7. You can be 9-love down in a tiebreak and then still win the match. So tennis is so tough because that momentum, which is the second one now, it just shifts all the time. Like if you think about the tennis matches you've played, you win the first set 6-love and then you lose the second set 6-love. You think, what happened now? So on top. Something switched, the momentum's changed, and that's hard to deal with, because in sport, momentum, like it's kind of steady, and it might go up if you score, it might go down if you concede in football or American football or netball. But in tennis, like momentum's up and down because you're winning and losing points in a rapid sort of fire motion. Mistakes are huge. I just mentioned in the previous slide, like you make a lot of mistakes in tennis, so you have to learn how to make those mistakes, and you've then got to problem solve. And a big thing I've been saying to my players recently is never make the same mistake twice in a row. Like at least try and adapt and change your position or manipulate how you're doing it, or try something different. Just don't make the same mistake twice, because if you make the same mistake twice, you're not learning. A big part of tennis is the environment. It's a one-on-one combat. That tennis court's huge. Like even if you're playing under 8 level and playing on a quarter court, it's still massive in comparison to the age and stage of the player. So you've got to make sure that the environment is a safe environment, because they're going to make mistakes. They're going to have to deal with momentum shifts. They're going to have to deal with difficult scoring. And part of our job, which we'll look at today, is making that much more of a positive learning environment. But we don't want to go over the top and make it too positive, because that then doesn't give us a sense of reality of the game. Like we have to be realistic with all this. So we'll talk a lot today about making stuff more positive, but we don't want to go far down the other spectrum where it's all rosy and everything's perfect. And this whole there's a culture at the moment where parents don't want their kids to fail. But you have to learn how to fail, because that's going to make you bounce back later on, not just in sport, but in life. So we're going to look at a learn environment a lot today. It is an individual sport. There's no place to hide. You've got no teammates to pass the blame to. There's no excuses to be made. But it's interesting, if you ever go to a tournament, players make a million excuses: the wind, the rain, the ball, the court, somebody's watching, bad line call. So they can't pass the blame on to others. They'll just then try and blame other things. Ultimately, it comes down to the player. Like, I think players have to take responsibility more. I think too often, again, parents and coaches, we make excuses for our players. Whereas it comes down to it, there has to be some responsibility there. And there's no guarantees in tennis. There's so many variables. Players need to make lots of decisions. When they're playing a point, they have to make multiple decisions. And again, as a tennis coach, we have to understand all these things and try and bring that into our practice environments. And a phrase I've been using a lot recently is train how you play. Like, so our training or practice environments have to try and be as realistic as possible, because when they go and compete and play matches, it has to feel similar. And I think there's a massive disconnect at the moment, especially here in the UK. Our training environments are so structured and so nice and fluffy, and it's lots of volume and sort of lots of positivity, and they go to matches and it's the opposite. So I think we need to make sure our learning environments are real and the players are training like they play. And I got asked recently what my role is as a coach. And I thought about it, and I was thinking, well, what is my role? Do I teach players how to play the game? Like, do I teach players how to play tennis? So do I teach technique and tactics and stuff like that? And I mentioned before about the sports psychologist comment that parent made. And I thought, you know what? It's not. My role is different. I feel my role is to produce confident players, because if they go onto court and they've got confidence and belief in what they can do, then they're more likely to win. So it's not about how they look. And again, if you watch any of my previous webinars about technique can look anyway. It's what you do with it, and if you get the W at the end, or if it's effective. So I'm less more about teaching how to play, but I'm more about now producing confidence when you play. And I think that's my role. I think that's the sort of the players' role as well. The players have to find what they're good at and walk onto court and be confident, not worrying about what grip they're using, or if they're, I don't know, brushing up more on the ball, or getting a more of a 90-degree angle on the serve. I think players shouldn't be going into matches thinking about that stuff. I think players should be going, yeah, you know what, my serve's a weapon, my forehand's a weapon. How can I use that best? And again, it goes back to that training environment. I think we have to make sure that we're producing more and confident players, which I think is really, really key. So what I'm going to do now is just talk through some of my mistakes. Like, I think I've got 5 mistakes on this presentation. Okay, so what mistakes have I made, and how have I learned from them? Because again, with a lot of my presentations, and when I do my mentoring online program, which I talk about at the end, it's not about like, this is me, I'm so great, I'm amazing, you should listen to me, and I know what's best. It's not. It's just, it's me talking about my mistakes and what I've learned from them. And so I've done this for 23 years. And if I can get you to avoid the mistakes I've made, then you don't have to do 23 years worth of work. You can watch this 40-minute webinar, not make the same mistake, and then you're going to be ahead of me in 23 years. And that's why I do this. It's to help coaches out. It's not to be to make lots of money or to be famous on Instagram or anything like that. It's literally to share my mistakes, and hopefully you'll learn something from them as well. So with mistake number 1 is focusing too much on the outcome. So focus on the results. So an example would be to win a match. So again, I've made the mistake of sending players to tournaments. Okay, let's try and get to the quarterfinal. Okay, let's try and get to the semi-final. Let's try and get a medal. Let's try and get our rating up to a 7.1, or let's try and get ranked in the top 10 in the county. So they're what we call very much outcome goals. within a training environment, an outcome goal may be, okay, let's get a rally of 20. Let's get a rally of 20 shots. Or let's get the ball in that very small box. So let's put a target out. Let's put a little target down the back or a line across the baseline or near the baseline. And you have to keep the ball past the line. So let's really focus on the outcome. What I've noticed recently is that puts so much pressure on players because all they're convinced about and all they focus on is the outcome. And that just puts so much pressure on the players. And what I've noticed is, let's use the example of the service line. Okay, so we've all done the drill where you have to keep the ball past the service line because we know as coaches we want to keep the ball deep, and that's effective for not allowing the player to attack. Let's say you set that target up and the player misses 2 or 3 shots. What happens then is the player starts to lose confidence. And then what do we do as coaches? We dive in straight away and we give loads of technical information how to improve it. And then the player is just overwhelmed with knowledge and words, and they're then stressing about how they're hitting the ball. And it just creates tension. And as coaches, you know, you play your best tennis when you're not even thinking. When you're in the zone, the ball feels like it's a big, massive beach ball. Everything slows down and you're completely focused. So then why do we add these pressures on? Now, obviously, there has to be an outcome there because if you hit the ball out, you lose. But what I've done a lot more over the last couple of years is really focus on the process. So focus on the how, not the what. It's focused on what. Sorry, it's focusing on not the outcome, the result. It's focusing on how to do it or what the player needs to do to achieve the outcome. So if I'm working on that hitting the ball past the service line, I might say to the player, okay, can you hit the ball above head height? All I want to focus on is hit the ball above head height. Because I know as a coach, if they hit the ball above head height, the ball's going to go further anyway. It's going to travel further because height's going to give me length. So what I'll get the player to do is if they hit the ball above head height, say yes. If they hit the ball below head height, they say almost. I like to use the word almost because no is very negative and it's very final. So if people say to me, if my kids say to me, can I play your PlayStation 5? No. If I say maybe, that gives them a little bit of hope. So almost is the same because it means working towards. And what you'll find is that if the players start hitting the ball above head height, one, they can see and feel it. So again, kinesthetic and visual learning. But 2, they'll get the outcome anyway. Because if they keep hitting the ball above head height, it's going to start traveling further. Therefore, they get the outcome anyway. So we could say, okay, let's get 20 above head height. So rather than 20 in the box, 20 above head height. And it gives them a sense of something they can control as well. And again, the process could be anything you want. Can you hit the ball in front of your shoes? Can you get your racket strings pointing towards a blue spot or a blue cone? You then differentiate your process to whatever the player is capable of. It's the same with tournament results. So when my players go to tournaments now is we set very basic process goals like, can you be athletic and alert before every shot? Are you going to be effective with your movement? Can you try and beat the bounce every shot? And we try and link it to stuff that the players been working on. And if they complete these processes, they're going to play well anyway. If they play well, they've got a good opportunity of getting the result. And it's something I've done quite a lot recently, and it works like an absolute charm. And the players buy into it a lot better because it just frees up that stress of not being able to achieve something, because we've all done it. We've all played a computer game or we've all done a puzzle or something. If it's just too challenging, we lose interest very quickly and we lose confidence. But if we can achieve something, then we start building in that confidence and it gets easier. And then guess what? We make it more challenging. It's like Super Mario. You do level 1, it's really easy. But as the game progresses, your skills have to improve. Therefore, you get more and more different challenges. And I think coaching has to be the same. So that's my first mistake. Too outcome focused, setting targets, putting little tiny cones down and getting to hit a cone with a serve. Unbelievably difficult. Or then making it too easy and giving them 80 cones and they can't miss. And it's like, well, what's the point? They're not really developing skill. So it's changing how I set up my drills and activities. So a lot of the drills and activities that I set up now, very much process-based, less outcome-based. Well, that ties in next, sort of nicely to the next one. So the coach sets all the rules. And this is an interesting one because, again, as a coach, we feel that we should be directing traffic. We should be telling players what to do and when to do it. When players play matches, they make their own decisions. Yeah. So they will decide whether to go line or cross on a short ball. They will decide to attack or defend off that deep forehand. They will decide to hit the ball flat and quick or whip it up with heavy topspin. So I think a lot of the decision making, the players need to have a say. Like simple ones that I do to players, do you want to play to 7 or 10, which I asked to play at the weekend. And it was interesting because the response was, okay, let's get to 10 because I've got a bit more time. And I sort of then threw it back to him and said, well, if you're playing really well today, shouldn't you make that 7? Because you're playing really well. So there's a good chance you're going to get quite a few points quite quick. And then therefore you don't need a lot of time. And it was like, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, I probably will go 7 then. Or if you're doing a lives, like say to your players, how confident you feel. Can you do it in 3 lives? Or do you need 6 lives? Like, how do you feel now? Because again, that feeling, kinesthetic, is really important. Because if you're playing a match and you're feeling confident, you're going to take more risks. If you're feeling nervous and tight, you're going to play a little bit safer. So when we set up these games and these activities, allow the players to set the rules. Why do we have to set them? Again, we don't understand what the players are feeling. Now, we have to maybe facilitate a little bit because you may get them, I want 100 lives. Oh, that's not very realistic. Or I want 1 life. So you get both ends of the spectrum. So that's when we have to sort of guide them into maybe, okay, 7 or 10 rather than tiebreak to 120 or 3. It just helps that again, that decision making and understanding how they feel in that moment. So let the players make choices. Let the players set the rules of games. Let the players decide. Again, a great one that I use a lot is 2-touch tennis. And sometimes we're playing, I'll say, you know what, if you want, you can take 2 touches or you can take 1 touch. And what will happen is the player will take 2 touches when they're under pressure. So they'll learn how to defend, but it will give them a sense of feeling when they're under pressure as well. Because if I hit the ball quick, they'll feel like they need 2 touches. And then when they go and play a real match, yes, they can't take 2 touches, but they'll feel like, oh, I've got to defend here. And the great thing about 2-touch tennis is they'll open the racket up to pop the ball up. So they may then slice in a match. Again, just letting them have more of a say in the lessons and they set the rules or I help them guide, set the rules, just gives them massive value. And guess what? If they feel like they've got an input, it feels more like the tennis, they're going to buy into it a lot more as well. This is one that I think we all do. And I did it recently and I didn't feel good afterwards. And you highlight the best players. So let's say you set up a drill, cross-court forehands. The players have to hit the ball cross-court, keep the ball in front of their shoes, process-based. And you say, oh my God, Steve's doing it amazing. Everyone watch Steve. He's so good. All that does is one, feeds my ego. I feel, yeah, I'm the best now. Look at me, look at me. And it makes the others feel a little bit rubbish. And I think if you are going to highlight good practice, and you should, I think you should almost try and highlight everyone in the group, or it's consistent. And you only highlight when you see something that's sort of that you're working on, and because we want that positive reinforcement to build confidence. But I think sometimes we always highlight the best player in the group. Oh, Steve's doing this, Steve's doing that. I think we need to make sure that we, spread that out a little bit, and we try and highlight something maybe every player does well in that session, so everyone has that feeling of, yeah, I'm really setting the standards, rather than just highlighting the best players. And again, it's something that I get challenged on quite a lot within coach education. I don't believe we should put the best players on one court and the less experienced on the other, or most experienced and less experienced. Parents want me to do that all the time, and I get so many comments and challenges of parents of why you put in Steve with little Steve. Little Steve's not very good. My Steve needs to train with the better players. That's the only way we're going to improve our tennis. And my argument's always the same. In the first round of a tournament, you're going to play someone less experienced than you. You need to learn how to develop skills when someone's not giving you a quality ball, when they're giving you something a little bit different, because a lot of the top players will all play the same way. So something that's a little bit different can throw you off. And you need to be able to have a mentality and focus when you're playing down, because it could be easy to think, oh, I'm number one in the county, I'm playing 27, this is going to be easy. And you'll see it in sport all the time. The underdog wins because they've got a belief, and maybe they let the more experienced players overconfident. So again, I think we need to mix our players around and sort of have that mix of experience and less experience. Because guess what? Those experienced players at some point were those less experienced players, and they've only improved because they've had a mixture of hitting partners. And I think that's really, really, really key. And again, it's confidence thing. You don't want to put a less experience together with a higher experienced player for a long period of time, because it will kill their confidence. But if you've got a group of 8, you're not going to have 8 very much the same players. There's going to be a mix of standards there. If you rotate them around every couple of minutes, everyone has a go of everybody. It gives that sort of that sparring against each other at different levels, which we find all the time in tennis. So to me, again, it goes back to ego. If you have the top court and the bottom court, if I'm on that bottom court, I'm not feeling good. If I'm on that top court, maybe I'm too good. And it's by mixing it round, you just stop that sort of separation. So big mistake I used to make is keep the best players together, keep the less experienced players together, mix them around. But also, if you are going to highlight good practice, try and highlight everybody in the group. Don't just highlight the best players. Brings on to this one again. I need to just touch upon it there. Maybe one slide a little bit too early. I'm in the zone here now. Just keeping the best players together. It drives me mad, because if you're in the top 4 in the county and you only want to play in that top 4, how are you going to get better? It's impossible, because you're hitting with the same people day in, day out. Like, you need to experience. I mentioned it before, I think on the third slide, about the challenges of tennis. Tennis is variable. You don't know what to expect when you play a match. You need to learn how to play against a junk baller. You need to learn how to play against a complete beginner, because it's challenging. I know me as a coach, I find it hard when I play down in my adult groups, and I find myself making lots of mistakes because I'm not engaged. Like, I know deep down that I'm gonna win because I'm technically and tactically a lot a lot better. But there's times when I've played matches and I'm not fully engaged, and I find myself 2 love down in an adult session. I'm like, oh my god. And then the pressure gets to me. I'm like, oh my god, I'm 2 love down. What happens if I lose this match? And it's situations that we need to put our players in more. Pardon me, I'm stuck in my throat this morning. A lot of coaching the weekend. But yeah, so it's just mixing the players around. I can't really stress this enough. And it's something that we have to educate the parents on, because they're going to want to go with the best players and only have the best players play together. Now, obviously, if you've got a complete beginner, you've got a county level player, that's not going to work. There has to be a balance there. And there's a great phrase I heard on a course the other week, that you want players just to be either hitting just above their level or just below. Yeah, you never want to just be flat. You never want to be too high, too low. So again, when you manage your groups and you're getting people to enroll on courses, you want that balance, and you don't want someone that's far too good or someone that's just too inexperienced, because then that's where it just doesn't work. So again, try and mix your groups around more. Try and cut out those egos. And something that I've done really successfully is you bring in your more experienced players into the less experienced players, because they're great role models as well. They're great role models, because they'll look at them and they'll say, you know what, they're only 6 months, 12 months older than me. If I keep practicing, I might get that opportunity to go into that group. And it's something I think that we need to do better and do more of, and stop being this elitist sort of sport where only the best can train together. I think we need to mix it around more, because at the end of the day, we haven't got a massive talent pool. Like, we've got a limited number of players. Like, we can't start segregating them and then sort of putting them into little tiny small groups. Again, you only have to look at, again, professional football or soccer. Like, if you look at their academies, they bring in the under 17 to train with the first team. Yeah, they're nowhere near the standard, but they bring everyone's standards back up. But also to to get that feeling. Because if they play a third round of the FA Cup and they're playing a non-league team, they're going to have to learn to play down and deal with different situations and different tactics. And number 5, this is a mistake that, again, I've made in the past, and it's not a good one. It's when you start comparing players to each other. Oh, I'm working with Steve and he does this. And I've seen it a lot on the Netflix documentary with Tony Nadal. And he's working with the player. I can't remember the player's name now. But all he does is go, Rafa does this. Rafa does that. I'm like, God, mate, he's an individual in front of you. Like, I'm going to stop listening. Once you say Rafa does this, Rafa does that, I'm going to stop listening to you because I'm not Rafa. I can't play like Rafa. What about me? Now, there's an interesting podcast I listened to yesterday driving back from county training with Steven Gerrard, who's played for Liverpool, worst football team in the world, by the way, being an Everton fan. But Gerrard said something really important or really good, I thought, in that podcast, because he said, obviously, he had such an amazing playing career, and the podcast was recorded when he was at Rangers, so he's just gone into management, and the host said to him, well, do you talk a lot about your playing career? And it was interesting because he said, yes, he does. But normally it's all the mistakes he made. A bit like what I'm doing today, funny enough. That wasn't the reason why. But he said he doesn't talk about how good he was or the goal he scored or what he did or what he won, because he doesn't want to players to think like it's the ego. Plus also what the player's going to learn from that. Surely the players are going to learn more from the mistakes. A little bit like what I'm doing here in this webinar. Like, I want you to learn from these mistakes about how I've set my climates up. And like I've done in the past where I'm working with a player and I'm working with another player who's a higher standard at the same time. And I say, oh my God, Steve wouldn't do that. Steve trains like this. Steve would do this. Steve does this. Steve does that. And I'm doing it from a good place because I'm doing it because I want to inspire. Okay, that's what they're doing. Can you do that? And I think looking back on reflection, I'm not doing that. I'm just belittling the player and saying you're not as good as Steve. And yeah, it's something that it doesn't sit well with me anymore, and it's something that I'm really trying to cut out. And maybe it is part of this reason why I'm doing this webinar, because I want you to learn from my mistakes. But I think coaches do it all the time. And not only just for peer-to-peer comparison, but Nadal does this, Federer does that, Djokovic does this, Venus does this, Serena does that. And you're doing that to a 9-year-old who's nowhere near physicality or technically or mentally anywhere near that player. And you're thinking, come on, like the gap's huge. Like, why are you comparing him to a top player? And you'll see it on Instagram all the time. Copy the Nadal forehand, copy the Alcaraz backhand. You're like, mate, like there's nowhere near the standard. Like that's not doing anyone any good. Focus on the individual in front of you. Tennis is unique, and we say it all the time, but yet I see coaches do the same lesson with one player that worked for someone else. So I'll do the same lesson with you that I did for my previous player, and then my next player will be the same lesson, and they're all different. Oh, but that worked really well with that group, so I'm going to try it with this group, and it's a different set of individuals. So we have to stop comparing players and thinking that one shoe fits all. We may go into lessons with a set idea and plan, which we should do, but then we should adapt it to what's in front of us. We should adapt and change it. And yeah, we definitely need to stop this whole such and such does it this way, or copy Nadal or copy Venus because they're doing it that way, because I don't think it's very positive. Again, it might be for some players, but I think for the majority of players, it just doesn't work. And the last one, classic one that we all do. Okay, as a group, let's rally to 20. First pair to 20 wins. And then your best players or your more experienced players get to 20, and then you stop the drill. And then your less experienced players down the bottom court, because you've obviously split the court, they're only getting rallies of 2. So your better players who found it too easy, have they really developed much skill? Probably not. And have the players who probably need to develop the skill more, have they had the opportunity to develop it? No, because the best players are blasted out 20 in one go. They need more time. So again, I've done this in the past loads. Okay, first 10, first 20, first to 5 in the box. Okay, first pair to get tie break score of 10. I've changed my way, and what I've started to do a lot now is, okay, every pair has to get 10. Every pair has to get rally of 10. We keep going so you all get it. So everyone gets it, we keep going because we're a team. Again, and that brings a really good team environment and sort of team structure to it. And what happens is you experience ones, blast out the 10, fine. Okay, now you play points, so keep you active and you can be competitive and you can keep working on some skills. But I'm giving the other players an opportunity to get to 10. And they'll get it because I'll set the targets in a way in which everyone can achieve it. Again, it's going to be a little bit challenging, but they will achieve it given a bit of time. And then guess what? Everyone achieves it. So everyone's confidence goes up because, yeah, I got that. Whereas previously, only your top 2 get it, and then the rest feel a little bit down because they haven't achieved it. And again, recently I've done, okay, as a team, and sort of this is in my book, actually. It's one of the games in my book. It's a team rally. Okay, so as a group, we need to get 250 shots. Okay, so as a group, 250 shots. You divide it by, I don't know how many pairs you have. Let's say each pair has to get 50. And it might not be a rally of 50. It might be 50 shots in or 50 shots above the head if we're working on process goals. And then you work as a team. So when then you hit 50 above head height, when you get 50, your group have completed the challenge. You've got 50 for the team. That's in the bank. Okay, now everyone else has to get their 50. And when you get the 250 together, you complete the challenge as a team. And wow, you know what? That's so effective. Because one, because no one wants to let the team down. So everyone really tries really hard to get 50. There's none of this, I can't do it. Because, okay, they have to do it. You've got to get 50 as a team. And it just completely changes the dynamic of the group. And everyone just raises the game and everyone achieves it. And then you get 250 and you all fist bump each other. And it's just, you know what? If you take one thing away from this webinar today, do that. Don't stop when one player or 2 players achieve the task. Create a team task that everyone has to work towards. And that makes it so much more appealing. So we've only just touched upon 6 of my mistakes. And trust me, I've got loads. I've got absolutely loads. We haven't really talked about score or decision making and obviously sort of other things that we can do. Because listen, we've only got 40 minutes in this webinar. So I just want to give you sort of just quick wins, quick fire wins. But I've got so much more that I want to share with you. So many more mistakes. So what I've done is I've written a 12-week mentoring program, which you may have seen on the website. If you go to my mentoring at the top of the toolbar, and it's a 12-week program, unlike any program in the world. No one's doing this. I'm probably the first coach to do it. I know a few other coaches. I've seen it, and I've seen some copycats, which is fine. Yeah, mine's based on someone else, not within tennis. I've put my own sort of slant and sort of spin on it. And in that 12 weeks, I give you 23 years worth of knowledge. Yeah, and it's all based around you. So we develop a personal development plan around your goals, what you're looking to achieve as a coach, your aspirations. I give you 12 recorded webinars, a bit like this one, but they're 1 hour in length and they're much more detail. And they're based on very specific areas, communication, lesson planning, technical development, tactical development, lots and lots of stuff. If you go on my mentoring page on the website, you'll see all the sort of the themes. But again, 23 years worth of knowledge that I'm going to share with you because I want you to learn from my mistakes. But it's not just the webinars, because these webinars are quite cold because they're recorded. I can't get feedback. I can't answer questions and stuff as well. That's why for 12 weeks, we do 1 hour live each week and we get all the coaches in. There's normally a maximum of 16 coaches. I have a topic which we put out at the start, and then we just literally just talk about it as a group and share ideas and share mistakes and share pain points and come up with solutions. And that's how I've learned more in coach education. It's not from reading or watching webinars, which are good because we are watching this one, but it's just sharing ideas and working with other coaches. And that's why I got into coach education, is to do all this stuff, is to share ideas. I think those live roundtables are going to be massive, and I'm really, really excited with them. But you also get 3 hours one-to-one with me, where we can actually talk more about you as the individual. Again, talked about quite a lot today. Like, you are unique as a coach. What works for you might not work for me. What works for Tony Nadal might not work for me. So I will also speak to you on a one-to-one basis as well. And again, just listen to your pain points and share my opinions and try and come up with some solutions together. You get 12 PowerPoint downloads. So you get all the webinars on a PowerPoint. You get a digital copy of my book with 50 odd drills in, which you can use at any age and stage. Even though it's an underrated book, that's more about the theory at the start, but all the drills, you can work with beginners, adults, or under 9s, under 10s. You get a copy of my tennis diary. Again, just helps, a good tool to give out to your players. You get a digital copy so you can share it with all your players. And that just helps them plan their 12-week worth of programming and gives their training a focus. If you have CPD credits or license points, I'm sure you can apply for independent learning. I know here in the UK, you could then send it off to the LTA. So you've got potential to have 24 license points, which is almost sort of 2 years worth. And you just get 23 years of mistakes and success and stories and stuff that I've done well, stuff that's worked, stuff that's sticked, and stuff that hasn't worked. And I'm constantly learning. If you follow me on Instagram at My Tennis Coaching, you'll see that I'm constantly doing CPD. I'm constantly listening to podcasts. I'm constantly going to different other sports because I love what I do. Tennis is always evolving and changing, and I'm trying to keep ahead of the game with a lot of the science and the sports psychology and the sort of modern trends. Again, I'm not doing it to get rich, really. I'm doing it to help coaches because I love working with coaches, and I'm doing it from a selfish point of view. Again, I'll be honest, that's one of my traits. I'm very honest, and I'm doing it to get some ideas from you lot as well, because I want you to share your ideas with me, and then I can get better as well. So that's my tennis mentoring program, or my mentoring program. You can find information on the website under my mentoring. The courses run for 12 weeks. Check out the latest date for our upcoming course. Feel free to ask any questions. Please email me at steve@mytenniscoaching.com or use the chat function on the website. I really hope you enjoyed this webinar. A little bit different. Again, I've not edited it. I'm just going to put it out there fresh. It's me. It's how I present. But I want you to just listen to some mistakes that I've made over the years. Hopefully it's going to help you. And if you are interested in learning more from me and sort of working together, please do check out my mentoring and also check out my new book, Underrated Constraints. And until next time, I'll see you soon.